to our next episode of Coffee with CISOs. Today I'm sitting down with a really important mentor, friend, and the other half of our founding partner team at Lockstep, the one and only Lucas Moody. And today we're diving deeper than what you'd really be able to learn from Lucas's LinkedIn or previous interviews. We'll be taking a peek behind the curtain to see what makes him the person he is today. So, Lucas, I'm so glad we're doing this. Thank you for indulging me and sitting down and letting me pepper you with some questions today.
Hey, I'm honored to be number 2 on your podcast.
Was there saltiness in the number 2? Or?
No, I'd prefer that.
Yeah.
I prefer that. Get the cobwebs out with Rinky so that I can be the true inaugural CISO in your series.
The true shining star. I know I told Rinky we'll have to do another one down the line and compare episodes.
We'll record these and add them to how we design our AIs of the future that'll replace Rinky and I. We'll have like a whole library of videos and things like that that'll ultimately turn into the AI version of Lucas and Rinky. It'll be fun.
This is all just training for that moment.
That's right.
So to start, I want to start way before Lockstep and Alteryx and just take a peek behind who you were as a kid. So what was young Lucas like growing up in Sacramento?
Sacramento. So you already knew it was Sacramento. Yeah, I grew up not too far from here in Sacramento. I was a latchkey kid. I think you've heard some of these stories before, but I was a latchkey kid. I happened to be the lucky only child of a single immigrant mother. And that's how I grew up. So most of my life up until the age of 18 was me kind of on my own while my mom went and earned for us to survive. And so I consider it very formative for myself. I kind of learned how to live on my own, kind of power my way through my upbringing. I often tell the story of since 6 or 7, I'd wake up, my mom was off to work already. I'd get myself to school. I'd make my own food. Come back home, do my own homework, put myself to bed, and sometime while I was sleeping, Mom would come home. So that was kind of my life, and so I learned a lot of independence. That's kind of that was my upbringing. Had a lot of fun. Obviously, my mom emphasized school and education. She, what little money we had, she invested most of it in helping me to stay excited about learning and about innovation and around tech. When I was really young, I had my first machine was a PC Junior. Then I had a 8286. Then I had a 386, and the list goes on. I mean, I built my own computers from when I was a wee little kid. And so I was lucky enough to grow up in the golden age of new tech.
I love that, and I love your special relationship you have with your mom. I think I learned your story a few months ago when we were out for drinks as a team, and just hearing how your mom helped shape you as a person. And I think growing up first gen, also growing up with a single parent, and just carrying that weight of, performing for yourself and also to give back to your mom one day. So I know that it plays a special role into who you are today and how you show up as a GP, how you show up as a CISO, how you show up as a dad. So thank you for sharing your upbringing. And one thing also I wanted to dig into is Rinky actually shared this with me. Not a lot of people know this about you, but you had to help your mom in college. So you had to take a break from schooling to help your mom. How did that experience shape you, and how did that kind of create the mindset of I need to become the earner?
Yeah, it's interesting because you're a product of what life throws at you, and I talk about this all the time. I talk about even this modern generation, and we've got way more means now than we did before. I hope that's a good thing, but I certainly was shaped by scarcity and just having to scrape by for the entirety of my life. My mom's been the same way, and so being an only child, and my father is Caucasian and my mother's Asian. My mother's Korean, but my mother's an immigrant, and so she never really spoke the language very well. She still doesn't, and my mom lives with me now, and I've been taking care of her for 20 years now. But back, a million years back, it was just the two of us, and so. As my mom got sick and was unable to work, I kind of had to find a way to trudge through life and figure it out. And so, yes, I had to make some decisions that were really tough. In hindsight, they were probably some of the most powerful decisions I could have made. I entered the workforce at a time where maybe losing a year or two might have changed my path and my trajectory. But it was a really interesting time when we were talking in the late 90s. And since I'm aging myself, I might as well be specific. But it was late 90s. There was a lot of things that were happening. This like internet boom and this tech boom were strong. Nobody really knew where things were going, but a lot of investment was being made into tech. And I was a techie, right? I grew up despite having simple means. Like I mentioned earlier, my mom bought me a computer and things like that, thinking that it would somehow benefit me to know how this shit worked, And so I was lucky. I played with tech, and I was kind of a techie, and I had opportunity. There was so much opportunity back then just to lean in and participate in, the upside of tech. And so that's what I did. And when my mom got sick, I won't go into detail, but she had to stop working. And so like she was really the only earner. I was a cost. And so I had to figure out turning being a cost into being an earner. And so I had to jump into the workforce a little earlier than I had hoped, but it ended up being a boon in hindsight. So no regrets.
Yeah, and I think that hustle attitude that you have definitely comes from that experience and having to maybe step up sooner than you had planned for, and just really just know how to get things done for yourself, provide for your family. And kudos to your mom for having that foresight of investing in tech at an early age, so that she could get you hooked. Maybe she was thinking, he's my retirement plan, so I better give him some gadgets to play with.
It's funny, like her bets were right. We talk about it all the time, but investing in the future is investing in a set of bets that you think you have an edge on. My mom knew I was good at tech, and she kind of leaned in and all in on that. Thank God it worked. But I would never look back. Even today, I'm still a builder in many ways. But yeah, I love the fact that I got to kind of ride that first wave of tech. It was fascinating then. It's fascinating today where we're at with AI, but I'll save that because I'm sure you got some questions on that. So I won't steal your thunder.
Absolutely. And to walk us back, so I know you mentioned you have that builder and kind of that engineering mindset naturally just from your experience as a kid, but what was your intro into cybersecurity? Did you have your sights set for that, or did it kind of fall in your lap? What was that intro like?
So I grew up a techie. As I mentioned, my mom had invested in me having tech. I mean, this is early days. A lot of folks, this won't even resonate because I'm probably going to be talking about tech that most folks don't even recognize. This is in the days of dial-up internet and things like that, or even before then. I mean, when I first got my first dial-up internet account, I had one of the first ones on Earth, and my foray into tech happened before then. But even back then, understanding how to break tech was kind of a thing. It wasn't cyber per se. It was more testing the boundaries of what's possible, understanding exception conditions and trying to break it in the spirit of fixing it, right? That's how things worked back then. It was you'd build something and then you'd test what would be the break conditions, and then you'd use that to debug and make product better and stuff like that. Well, that played into security because oftentimes you'd find yourself in a position where you break something and then something would be exposed. And so I did a lot of mucking around with systems. I won't go into detail, but there was a lot of fun that my friends and I, my nerdy friends and I had, hacked some college mainframes and things like that, and just had a lot of fun with it. But it was more like, it was more on the scale of a couple of teenagers going out and tagging or something like that. It wasn't that big a deal. It wasn't devastating. We weren't bringing down massive systems that were generating revenue. It was just more testing the boundaries of things. But it kind of got me thinking, and it got me excited about it. So I was one of the earliest CISSPs. I don't remember my original number, but I'm pretty sure my CISSP was 4 digits. And so I just, I had interest in that stuff. I was like an old school sysadmin, old school Red Hat certified engineer. I was constantly hands-on tech. And then, I was a builder back then as well. I wasn't a great developer or a great coder, but I was an early C guy. And a good friend of mine when I was in high school, he and I built one of the first email clients for OS2 Warp 3. And so just always had an interest in that stuff. Even now, now I'm more of a vibe coder than anything else, but I still enjoy building stuff, even if it's not to create product necessarily, if it's just to learn the process of it. But yeah, that was a long way around the barn, but I just love seeing things come together.
I can tell you're just naturally a curious person. Like you're always tinkering around the office. There's a new toy and you want to explore how it works from end to end. And I know we're going to jump into AI in a bit, so we'll save that piece for later. But as you were sharing your story with cyber, I think it's similar to like the generation that was before the iPhone. You know, we did life before the iPhone and then life post iPhone. It's almost an art form to know how to do things without having something so easily accessible at the touch of a finger. And now with engineers, and you know, you have a daughter that's in college studying computer science. What's your take on students who are currently studying computer science and now with the adoption of AI everywhere to code? Do you think it's still important to get that formal education on computer science and learning the background, the history, and the end-to-end education of comp sci? Do you think that's still important?
Yeah, it's a really good question and one that's hotly debated today. I participate in that debate too. I have a pretty strong point of view around it, but who knows if I'm right or wrong, in the future will tell. But there's a lot of folks that, so a little storytelling first. I was chatting with somebody recently, and they were saying that in the wake of all the things that all the advancements we're seeing in AI in the last year, that comp sci application rates have gone down. And I get it. A lot of folks are scared. AI is going to take the jobs and blah, blah, blah. I don't think that at all. Like, I'm on the opposite side of that fence. I mean, AI is certainly going to be disruptive. It already is. But I think the next golden age is coming. And it's interesting. There's a lot of naysayers like, I wish I didn't have, AI slop and all the rest of this stuff. There's a lot of things that AI has contributed to in negative ways, 100%. But I think what AI is going to, in the long run, enable is for like everybody to truly become product managers, everybody to truly kind of be able to create things. And we're going to have a wealth of like the creation of stuff. A lot of it might not be great. That's fine. And when there's a lot of folks that create artwork, and some of it bubbles to the top as like truly like game-changing artwork. But that's kind of the process of like leveraging new tech to do cool stuff. And so I think in the long run, while it's disruptive in the short, I think AI is going to do amazing things for people in the long run. And I think it's going to create an abundance of wealth. And I think we're going to have another like tech golden age like we did, at the sunrise of web and the internet. So I'm optimistic. I've always been a techno optimist, maybe to a fault, but none of this stuff scares me. And going back to your original question, like, is it worth pursuing a comp sci degree? Absolutely. I think the best builders are going to be the ones who are able to kind of think about how things need to be shaped and how the computers think and operate and how data works and how to manipulate and use data to benefit an outcome and all the rest of that stuff. Look, I'm old school. There's kids that are graduating or that that have graduated in the last 5 years or will be graduating in the next 5 are going to be are going to be at the tip of spear and at the forefront of like modern tech. I think they're going to be well positioned if they have a formal education on this stuff to do some really cool stuff and just to have a leg up into how the world operates. It doesn't mean you have to cut code, but learning how to cut code, I think, prepares you for kind of managing an army of agents to go code something for you, right? Exactly. And it's going to make that less daunting and less like intimidating, I think. I mean, furthermore, I think like it's just important to understand how things work. At the foundational or fundamental level, not just how they work now, how I use tools now to do a thing. That's important and that's interesting. Make no mistake about it. But also like being able to like go back into like how things work fundamentally. I think that shapes your ability to build cool stuff too. So I'm not saying everybody has to do it, but I think there's still a place in the world for all these disciplines and for folks to get really good at very niche things, because those niche things, in fact, in the future, I think they become even more powerful to like retain that knowledge and have somebody to go to that's like an expert in a thing or a field. You know what I mean? I think the big argument that I have is I think the cost of education needs to come down. The set of institutions that charge a house, the cost of a home to teach, I think that has to go away. I think that needs to be fixed. But I think like formal education, also the discipline of going to school and studying and seeing your education through to completion. I think that also like in very formative years, like from 18 to 22, it's a very formative time. I think that's very powerful too. But can there be exceptions to that? Absolutely.
Yep.
I'm an example of an exception to that.
And I'm on your side as well. I feel like AI is only as efficient as the user. So for all of these engineers who are still in school and coming out of school, to your point, they can only build an army of bots that can help code for them if they understand the process and how to even, get things set up. So I do agree. I think it's important for engineers to go through that process. And of course, there's going to be more efficient ways you can do it without it. But to all your points before of just having that experience and understanding the history and zooming all the way out to understand how things work, how to break them is really important.
I would offer one little counterpoint, just so any listener is clear on this. I think, is there another path? Absolutely, there's a million paths. Starting to muck around with agentic coding at 13, if it's your passion, and diving deep and learning how to build your own large language model when you're younger, and then really building your own foundational understanding through experiential means. 100% go do that, and then you might not need a formal education. I mean, if you're that structured and organized around what your passions are, you don't necessarily need a formal education either. I'm just saying, I think as a general rule, it's a really good way to go deep in a discipline and to learn discipline, if that makes sense.
I agree, because now there's a million paths there, so plenty of options. But I wanted to pick your brain on that because it's timely with you having a daughter in college and you also coming from a background of jumping straight into work. So I figured you would have a good perspective on that. I wanted to switch gears and talk a little bit about your security career. So one thing I really wanted to ask you about was that moment you went from director at Intuit to getting the CISO offer at Palo Alto Networks. That doesn't just happen. You have to be a special human that's really talented to get that invitation to interview. So what did that moment mean to you, and can you walk me through what it felt like to get that call from Palo Alto's CEO to interview for that role?
Well, yeah, I mean, look, I think I was very lucky and kind of in the right place at the right time. I mean, I'm not to take anything away from the things that I had done and invested my time in before then, but I was, there was a lot of luck involved, but I mean, it's a very meaningful thing for me. I like to tell the story. I was at Intuit. I had just left eBay, PayPal, where I was for a long, long time, to join Intuit. And Intuit's an amazing company. I was with amazing folks and amazing leaders there. But one day I was a customer of Palo. I was a very early customer of Palo in the very early days of Palo growth. And I was asked, because I was a Palo customer and I owned the budget for it at Intuit, I was asked by Palo Alto Networks in their early days to come and participate in one of their executive briefings. And at the time, I'm like, I don't have time for this. Like, send somebody from the team, this and that. And my account exec was like, no, please, just like, even if you can come for a little bit. And by the way, I had to travel later on that day. And I'm like, okay, I could probably do an hour. So I'm going to show up in the middle of your session. I'll pop in for like an hour. I'll hang out with you guys, and then I've got to head to the airport, kind of thing. And so that's what I did, and I went. And I didn't realize, because I was kind of coming into it midstream, I didn't realize all the heavy hitters that they had in the room. All I brought was the bit of annoyance that I had at some components of their product that I wasn't too big a fan of, and I used that hour to basically berate them on this product. Their firewall was amazing, but they had these attached services and secondary products that I wasn't a big fan of. Well, little did I know, I had like the founder of the company in the room. I had the chief marketing officer. I had the CEO. I didn't know this. I wasn't there for the intros. And then I got to find out while I was in the room who I had in the room, and I was kind of embarrassed that I had just went on a rant. And I remember telling my account exec that, the next time you invite me to a room, you don't tell me that the CEO's in the room. You're fired as my account exec. I still love that guy. Anthony, shout out. Love you. Anyhow, it was the next couple of days that I got a call from Mark saying that they're hiring for CISO and they'd love for me to throw my name in the hat. And so I was like, I'd be honored. And I did. And I met the executive team there, and one thing led to another. And I ended up getting an offer to report directly to the chief financial officer at the company at the time, Stephen Tomlinson, who still is somebody that I revere and look up to. So it was kind of a dream come true. It was just the whole thing happened in like 3 weeks, and I was over the moon because not only was I excited about this big job that I was taking on that I felt like I had to fake it till I made it, but it also happened to be at a company that it was like the top 5 companies that I would dream to work at. And so it just, it was like this magical thing happening. But yeah, I still think about those days. And man, those days at Palo were some of the best days of my career. I mean, it was stressful. I learned a lot. I was put to the test daily, but it was so fun as well.
Yeah, and to make you feel uncomfortable, because I know you're very humble and hate taking compliments, but that was definitely more talent than luck. And so I hope you feel very proud of that moment, because they saw something in that room, they saw the potential. And also to be the first CISO, not only just a CISO, but the first CISO at Palo Alto Networks, and to see where it stands as a company today and to really help build what that security program looked like from the ground up. I hope you feel proud of that moment.
I'm very proud. Thank you, Katelyn.
Of course. And I do want to kind of double down on something you just shared about, maybe that moment of having imposter syndrome, stepping into that role from a director level role. This is something that I spoke with Rinky about during her episode. Something that I admire about you both is you have this really great executive presence and confidence. Did that come naturally for you, or is that something that you had to train and be coached on? And what did that journey look like for you?
Well, I appreciate you saying that I've got that presence. Work still freaks me out on most days, and having to stand up and play a role still freaks me out most days. But no, like earlier in my career, I shouldn't say early because this wasn't not even at my first job, but like even my second and third jobs, like. Having to get up and present in front of a high-risk audience or whatnot, whether it be a customer or whether it's in front of executives or, the first time I had to sit in front of a board, the first time I had to stand in front and do an all hands and stuff like that. It was scary. I legit, like there was one time, the first time I had to do, I remember this, I won't say where, but the first time I had to do a calibration meeting, I passed out. I was so nervous. I blacked out. So yeah, no, I mean it's hard, like getting out of your comfort zone and learning to get comfortable in your own skin. It's it takes time. So I remember doing I was doing what's that called, Toastmasters, to just feel more comfortable. But even now, there's times where I get up in front of an audience and it still scares the crap out of me, and I'm still worried about getting nervous and whatever else. But no, I mean it's I've gotten better at it over time. But yeah, imposter syndrome's real, and we all have it. The first time you get a big job, you will feel like you're gonna have to fake it till you make it, and that's just how the world operates. It's those that despite that still hop in with both feet. I think those folks are the ones that make it. The ones that allow their fear to dictate what actions they take. That's where you start to fall over, I think.
Agreed. And I definitely wanted to ask you that question too, because in a way it's reassuring hearing people that you idolize or people you feel, public speaking comes naturally to them, or just they have this energy and this presence and you feel they were just born with it, but it's reassuring. But one thing I also wanted to pick your brain on that we explored with Rinky, and something that's a little bit more talked about in tech, is being a mom in tech, but what really isn't talked about a lot is being a father in tech. So I know you're a dad to 3 awesome ladies. I wanted to see, how has being a father shaped who you are and how you show up at work? I
remember, when my first was born, everybody talks about, when you become a father, you'll know, whatever. And I always thought that was just nonsense that people said until I experienced it myself. It's kind of like when you become a parent for the very first time, it's like you start to realize that, holy crap, there's all these things that I thought mattered don't really matter. It's kind of liberating. You end up being somewhat liberated. And then you end up having this great deal of responsibility that kind of takes the place of this new freedom. So you're liberated from your fears, and you're feeling like all these things are important. It's those aren't important anymore, but now you've got some other important stuff to spend your time on. So does it really change much? No, you're just putting your effort and time elsewhere. But it definitely changed me. Definitely helped with my confidence as well, because this is super cliche, but it's just true. And those parents out there will know that I mean it when I say it. But you've got something else to work work for. But one of the cool things for me is I try to do as much as I can. I don't know if I do a great job at it, but just like getting tech into the hands of my kids, even if it's just talking through stuff, even if it's talking about how I use tech, especially today. I talk to people about this all the time, but it's like, it's really important that you understand how to use modern tools, because the modern tools are going to shape what future jobs look and feel like, especially now more than ever. So, I'm always trying to like be the peddler of tech, like trying to get folks interested, find something. Most of the time I don't land, but like years ago when, this is a long time ago, it was probably 3 years plus ago when early music generating AI came out. I was working with my girls over one weekend to like create a band, and we're going to create songs with that band, and we're going to create, a whole identity. And we did that. And it wasn't to do the music. It wasn't about that. It was like to like show what creation looked and felt like, right? To get them interested in it. I don't know if it worked, but it was a good experiment, I think. And I was sharing that with other parents, like, play with some of this, like do some of that, So anyway, I like, at least like for me, like that stuff is still really fun. And then, even like helping high school and early college students, like helping them to build some confidence in their career early through like internships and stuff like that. That's still very meaningful to me. So.
For you as a dad, you almost gamify it to exploring tech. I know you game with your older daughter, and that's a way that you guys bond, and you're also just tinkering with new toys and games and systems that hit the market. So I think that's really special too. But I always wanted to pick your brain on what it's like to be a dad, and I know you do 2 full-time roles, so it's always worth kind of exploring what that experience is like for you. All right. I know you've been involved in a lot of disruptive startups in your 25 plus years in cyber, and been involved in a lot of great brands early on in your career. Can you talk about your role in those companies?
I've always been really interested in, people who are bold enough to think that they can do things differently is probably the best way to put it. What I don't like is I don't like taking how we do things now for granted. And I think a lot of companies do that. And then they end up being, they end up getting caught up in the cycle of land expand with their product, but then they forget the innovation part that got them there in the first place. So I love the ecosystem of folks that come in and challenge what the incumbents do. Even if it ends up helping the incumbents get better over time, it's that competition, that level of competition. It's like the scrappy new guy forcing the big behemoth in the room to change a little bit over time, right? It ends up being a really great forcing function for positive change that ends up impacting all of us. So that is the primer. And so I've always had an affinity to those that even if their ideas are crazy and somewhat out of sight, those that are bold enough to do that. And so I think naturally where we've landed with Lockstep is just, like an evolution of that. But early on, like back in the day, it was like, even back at eBay, PayPal, we helped companies by creating creating the early product requirements for products that ended up becoming massive. Right? I won't bring up brands. I'd bring up brands in a personal setting, but like in a setting like this one, I don't want to like throw brands out there. But there's a lot of names that were companies nobody had ever heard of that we were like very early customers of, and we helped those companies with a problem set that was pretty massive in scale. eBay, PayPal at the time, we pushed more content on the internet back in the early days than Meta or Facebook at the time, and so we pushed a lot of bandwidth back then. And we had like really interesting use cases, and we were able to help build early products. And then that went on as I progressed through my career. Things like email security, things like endpoint security, things like threat intelligence and threat intelligence-based services, and getting involved to support companies in vulnerability management and pen testing firms and things like that. We were there very early, and when somebody was good, we would help to amplify them. And so all that work ultimately then played into kind of the impetus for Lockstep, which is like, how do we take this understanding in this market, the understanding of the tech, the understanding of the problem space, and the understanding of the buyers and how the buyers operate, and then help to amplify founders that we have a great deal of chemistry with. And so that was kind of that. And then the other side of it is it was always like the CISOs never really get to participate in the upside. And so for us, it was about building community and finding a path to really make CISOs and security practitioners play a more meaningful role in kind of the growth of this industry. And so, yeah, those two things led to what is now this Lockstep community that we've built.
Yeah, which is a perfect transition into one of my questions for you. I know Lockstep is essentially yours and Rinky's love letter back into cyber. It's your way of giving back to the practitioner community and investing time, energy, and capital into the cyberspace. So what are you most excited about for Lockstep in the next 12 months as GP? Like what's your vision for the next year and what gets you out of bed every day?
There's like every aspect of everything. I mean, I'm just, I mentioned earlier, I'm a techno optimist. And so like seeing how the world and tech is like evolving at orders of magnitude almost every time I wake up. It's like some new advancement that's pushing the boundaries of what's possible in really powerful and meaningful ways. That stuff excites me. Being able to muck around and clod code and build things based on what my idea of a great CRM or a great interface into another kind of set of problems, whatever it is, that really gets me pumped and excited. So thinking about the next 12 months, I mean, lots of investment in AI. I think a lot of winners will be born in, call it 2025 to 2027. I think we're at the forefront of tremendous growth. And I think there's a lot of smart people that want to do some great stuff. So that's really exciting. Two, the community build is probably the most meaningful and the thing that like gives me the most purpose in all this. It's like building a community of practitioners, operators, people that care about this stuff, people that are involved in the industry, building, locking arms and, finding ways to support one another in powerful ways. That's really meaningful to me. And then, of course, like getting the time with everybody and furthering that build out a community. That's probably the one that gives me the most passion and meaning. And then, of course, like being able to support phenomenal founders and realizing their dreams and their wants and the crazy ideas that they have. I love that as well. And so I'm looking forward to Rinky and I have been talking about this for a long time. We want to do a podcast, but this podcast we want to orient around getting into the mind of a crazy founder. Kind of like there was an old series that I loved. It was called The Mind of a Chef or something like that. And it was Anthony Bourdain would go around. This is different than his No Reservations and stuff, but he would go around and just hang out with chefs for a day or maybe a week, I don't know, for a length of time, and would get into their heads, and you realize they're a little crazy. They're a little nuts. They can be psychopathic at times. They can be sociopathic at times. They can be geniuses at times. They could be, depressed at times. Like getting into their heads and understanding how they work and operate. I was always fascinated by that. And I was fascinated by another guy, Errol Morris, who did this series called First Person. It was that's like the inspiration for this podcast that Rinky and I want to do, where we get in the mind of founders. Or builders, call it, it doesn't just have to be founders, like just people who like to build and like their brain operates in a different way. And like picking apart, like helping folks to understand how they operate. So that's another thing I'm really excited about in the next 12 months is getting that kicked off. But man, there's so many ways to be a creator now and, or a builder / creator. And so all that stuff really gets my juices flowing. So yeah, there's a lot that gets me out of bed every day.
Yeah, I can't wait for your guys' podcast too. That's the reason why I wanted to start Coffee with CISOs too, is just to, take a peek behind the curtain and understand why people are the way they are, why they jumped into cyber, what keeps them in cyber, why they've made choices along the way in their career journeys. So I'm definitely going to be your #1 subscriber for the Locked In podcast when that rolls out. But
so we'll have one weekly viewer.
2 views. I'll start it and then I'll end it another day in the week. But awesome, Lucas. Thank you so much for spending the time with me. I know we can chat for hours more, but want to be mindful of your time here. So really appreciate you sitting down and letting me explore some topics with you today. I do have one last question with you. I think it's the most important question of the day. Let me just there's a graphic that I have to share with this here. So how does one grow a beard like this?
Well, for someone like me who has patchy facial hair to begin with, that was like 6 months of effort during the pandemic. I didn't realize how sexy I was back then, though. It's good. I like that.
6 months of uninterrupted effort to grow this. I think you got to bring it back.
I look like the cat from Shrek.
Oh my God. What is it, Puss in Boots?
Puss in Boots. I look like Puss in Boots.
I love it.
With my Spanish-looking, partial facial hair.
Bring it back this year. Thank you, Lucas, for the time. I really appreciate you sitting down with me today.
Happy to do it. Thanks, Katelyn.
Wanna